Part of this video is being made as a joke, part of it is being made because I just think it's funny. Let's go out there and read Frank Seravalli's newest tweet on the Toronto Maple Leafs and their GM search. Now sure, there are other names, aside from the main two that I wanted to focus on, that are brought up in this Seravalli tweet, but because I find this really hilarious, we're going to focus mostly on two guys. So this is what Chiarelli tweeted out yesterday. I mean, I said latest tweet, it's from yesterday, whatever. An update is an update. As the process to find the next Maple Leafs GM gets moving, I'd expect Toronto to interview at minimum Jason Botterill, MARC BERGEVIN, Brad Treliving, and Peter Chiarelli, if they haven't already. 4 names to chew on in Toronto. Now the thing is, based off of everything we'd been seeing from other NHL insiders and how they're steering this conversation, it's very apparent that out of all these candidates, the one that may have the highest chance of being the next Maple Leafs GM is Brad Treliving, former Calgary Flames guy. He left the team and there was the entire breakdown with the coaching, Nazem Kadri, Huberdeau expressing frustrations with Daryl Sutter, etc. But Brad Treliving did a pretty good job with Calgary, and now if he's the guy that's likely going to end up in Toronto, that's a pretty alright get. But what I wanted to do in this video was talk about 2 of the other guys that were part of Canadian organizations that are also in this discussion as well. MARC BERGEVIN and Peter Chiarelli. Now, I'm doing this because it's funny, not because I feel like these are the more likely names, but just because if MARC BERGEVIN and or Peter Chiarelli find themselves as the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs sometime soon, I would find that absolutely hilarious. For MARC BERGEVIN, he's a guy who was the Canadiens GM for quite some time, and he's currently in LA. There are also conversations about BERGEVIN being interviewed or maybe discussed for jobs in Pittsburgh, and I mean, look, it's neither here nor there. We're going to find out what happens soon over the next coming weeks. But BERGEVIN did build that Montreal Canadiens squad that sent themselves to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2021. Now, could you say that the Canadiens benefited from a very specific set of circumstances in the North Division, which allowed them to ultimately capitalize on a choking Maple Leafs team after being down 3-1 in that series? You could say that they capitalized on a Winnipeg team that lost out on Mark Scheifele after he had that terrible hit on Jake Evans. And could you say that they rode that momentum and they had Carey Price backstopping everything, which is what helped them get past Vegas? Sure, the Montreal Canadiens in 2020-2021 were not the team that anybody thought were going to make it to the finals in the first place. But at the end of the day, they did. And they did so in a pretty convincing fashion, only to lose out to the Tampa Bay Lightning. And sure, the Lightning had themselves a much easier series, it appeared, against Montreal than they had against Dallas the year prior. And heck, you could even say that the Canadiens might have been one of the weaker teams to make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. But at the end of the day, MARC BERGEVIN built this team, and the way he did so was so formulaic in a way that it's kind of funny to just look at everything back with hindsight. He got the top scorers, the Toffoli's, the Caulfields, the Suzuki's. He got the depth options, the players to help out in the bottom of the lineup, the speedsters. He got the old veteran leadership. Corey Perry was a part of that. And he built an immovable decor that could just eat up minutes and do things the right way in their own zone. Shea Weber, Jeff Petrie, Edmondson, Sherratt, these guys went out there as a force, and then of course you had the franchise goaltender Carey Price doing his thing and making sure that he was a $10 million goalie in the postseason. For some reason, Carey Price, for all the times that his regular seasons were subpar, he always came alive in the playoffs, and he always showed up when he needed to the most. He was like that grandpa in the rocking chair, just kind of doing his thing, minding his own business, but once the playoffs gets going, that's when he stands up and he's like, okay, it's my time to shine. And for all the criticism that MARC BERGEVIN gets as a GM, he did build this squad. And one of the things that a lot of people loved about BERGEVIN was that he was so enthusiastic about the product that he built. He was always with the team, down in the locker room when they won all their overtime games. He would be on the bench cheering them on and high-fiving them. That postseason run was magical, and BERGEVIN had a lot of fans in Montreal because of it. Now, heading over to Toronto, I'm not going to go out there and say that he could immediately do the same thing with the Maple Leafs. You kind of need a franchise goaltender to be able to do what BERGEVIN did with Montreal in 2021. But at the very least, Bergevin has a super unique ambition that allows him to just make trades consistently and really not back down from any sort of tough business decisions. With the Canadiens, he would be making trades all the time, just over and over, new trades, new trades, new trades. It was good for me because I could make videos about it and we'd make more money, but like at the same time, Bergevin just had that style. He was not afraid to make bold moves and bold acquisitions. So for Toronto, if that's what you feel like they need the most, then hey, let me know in the comments all your opinions about that. Heading over to the other guy though, Peter Chiarelli is also who I wanted to talk about in this video here too, because he was the former Oilers GM, and a lot of people would remember Peter Chiarelli as being the guy who had the easiest decision in the history of general managing NHL teams ever. That was the first overall pick back in 2014-15. All he had to do was say Connor McDavid and his job would be secure for the next 5 years at the very least. He drafted McDavid. Okay, great. But there were so many other terrible moves that Peter Chiarelli made that there's even an article on thehockeywriters.com, Peter Chiarelli's 10 worst moves as Oilers GM, published by Mehtab Singh Bains from earlier in March. I mean, there are 10 things here. There's a lot. If you want to go down to the bottom, Taylor Hall for Adam Larson was arguably the worst trade in Oilers history, and Peter Chiarelli was the guy who did that. There also was the Griffin Reinhart trade, there was Milan Lucic, there was trading Eberle for Ryan Strome. Yeah, there's a lot of trades over here that are not great. Mikko Koskinen's contract is also listed out here too. Peter Chiarelli is notorious for building a team that was not able to get it done with Connor McDavid at the helm. Now, sure, it's not like Ken Holland has done too much of a better job, but at the very least they made it to the third round last year. And I don't really know if there are too many Oilers fans going out there and giving Peter Chiarelli, of all people, the props for assembling a team that would find itself in the third round in 2022. But at the very least, he was the guy that sort of laid the foundation in a way. It's just there were so many other errors that needed to be corrected that, yeah, Peter Chiarelli's reputation definitely precedes himself. It's not good. And if you have the Toronto Maple Leafs going out there and deciding that Peter Chiarelli could be the guy over Brad Treliving, who did a pretty alright job with Calgary last year, over MARC BERGEVIN, who has that Stanley Cup final to his name, then I'm just gonna laugh. That's it. I'll laugh. We could talk about Jason Botterill too, but there's like a few minutes left in the video. I kind of don't really feel like we have the time to do that properly, but either way, if you are a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, let me know in the comments what are your opinions about each of these guys that we had talked about. I guess you could let me know your thoughts on Brad Treliving since he's sort of the emerging candidate in these conversations, but aside from the Calgary Flames, what are your thoughts on former Montreal Canadiens GM MARC BERGEVIN and former Oilers GM Peter Chiarelli? Chiarelli is the one that I'm kind of pulling for the most just because I'm a fan of chaos and I'd love to see everybody implode when that gets announced. But you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How could Peter Chiarelli fix up the Maple Leafs? How could MARC BERGEVIN fix the Maple Leafs? Where do you think the next direction of the team is if Brad Treliving takes over instead? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed. Also, before we do the outro, if you're a fan of the Oilers and or the Canadiens, please give your scouting reports, give your details, give your opinions on your former GMs in the comment section below. If you're an Oilers fan and you're, let's just say, being asked, hey, the Maple Leafs might hire Chiarelli, what are your opinions on that? Then let me know in the comments what are your thoughts on Chiarelli and how he could handle the Maple Leafs. Same thing for the Canadiens fans out there. Let me know in the comments all your opinions about MARC BERGEVIN. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.